Hi, my name is Adriana Binti Adlam. I'm a second year student in Bachelor of Agriculture in Animal Science, and today I'll be talking about hoof trimming in cattle. Just a disclaimer, I have personally never done hoof trimming in cattle before, but I thought this was an interesting topic to share about based on attending a hoof care convention and also watching and reading about hoof care videos on YouTube and the internet. Now, with that being said, let's get on with the video. What is hoof trimming? Hoof trimming is done to achieve proper heel and toe length for better balancing through weight distribution as well as to avoid lameness. It is important to avoid lameness in cattle, lameness being pain in their legs when walking, because healthy cattle will lead to more productivity and more profit for the farmer and better welfare for the animal overall. A study done in Nigeria showed that contact cattle farmers noticed that the hooves of their cattle had some issues such as overgrown hooves as well as cracked hooves and other problems, but due to lack of knowledge on what to do, these problems were left untreated. As a result, this caused there to be a decline in the production of meat and milk. Overgrown hooves can make walking extremely painful for the cattle, and this can lead to hoof and leg problems as well as even disturbing the ability for the animal to compete for feed. So when the cattle eats less and exercise less, this can lead to other problems involving the foot area and also even arthritis. Another reason why hoof trimming is especially important in breeding animals, specifically the breeding male, is because a breeding male would need strong hind legs in order to mount the female cattle. However, if their hind legs are experiencing lameness due to improper hoof care, this could affect the reproductive performance of a herd. So when we talk about hoof trimming, there are two types. The first is the preventive, also known as routine hoof trimming, which is done to avoid lameness and claw disease. And the second type is curative, or also known as therapeutic hoof trimming. And this is done to treat any lesions in the claw and to also control the spread of infectious disease in the foot. When hoof trimming is done, a trim chute is used to secure the cattle in place as well as to avoid the cattle and the trimmer from being injured during the process. A trimmer should be wearing protective gear such as eye protection, earplugs and gloves when conducting this hoof trimming. The tools needed during a hoof trimming are an electric wheel grinder to remove excess sole, a hoof nipper to remove excess toe, hoof knives to carve and remove necrotic or diseased tissue, a hoof check tool to measure the proper length and thickness of the sole of the hoofs, a hoof tester to test any painful areas in the hoof as well as to assess the thickness of the hoof, blocks and glue. A common method used during hoof trimming is the 5-step Dutch method, which includes the first step is to trim the inner sole. A hoof check tool is used to measure the appropriate length of the toe, and a hoof nipper is used to nip the excess toe. And then an electric wheel grinder is used to remove the excess hoof. A hoof tester is then used to apply pressure on the hoof to assess for the thickness of the sole. Then the second step is to trim the outer hoof, and once it has been trimmed to the proper length, once it is trimmed to the proper length, the handle of a hoof knife can be used to assess the weight distribution between and within the claws. And the third step is to model or carve the hooves by using a hoof knife, and this is done to allow flow of muck and manure in between the toes, and as well as to reduce pressure on the typical sole ulcer site. It is important to avoid the toe triangle in this process. For the fourth step is to inspect for any claw lesions, and this is done by using a hoof tester to check if there is any painful areas in the sole, and if there are, curative or therapeutic hoof trimming is done by using a hoof knife to remove the diseased tissue, and a block is glued onto the sole of the healthy claw as to relieve pressure and to allow for the affected claw to heal better. The last step is to trim excess horn. It is important to avoid removing too much weight-bearing surface from the bulbs of the heel and to also check for digital dermatitis. That is all from me. I hope you've learned something new and thank you for watching.